You don't belong here, sweetheart. The words hit Maya Chen like a slap across the face. Two Navy officers stood over her seat, smirking, while a flight attendant nervously asked her to return to economy. She was 28 years old, a decorated Army sergeant with 2 bronze stars and a Purple Heart. But none of that mattered to men who saw only her age and her gender. She gathered her bag and walked back through first class in silence, their laughter following her like knives. They didn't know it yet, but in 90 minutes, those same men would be begging her to save their lives. Before we dive into what happened next, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now let's get into it. The morning Maya Chen boarded transatlantic flight 847. She had no idea she was walking into the worst day of her life, and also the best. Frankfurt International Airport was chaos. Holiday travelers, business executives, military personnel returning stateside. Maya moved through the crowd with the quiet efficiency that 12 years in the Army had drilled into her bones. Her olive drab duffel hung from one shoulder. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail. No makeup. No jewelry except dog tags tucked beneath her shirt. She looked exactly like what she was, a soldier heading home. At 28, Maya had already seen more than most people twice her age. 3 combat deployments. Crew chief on Black Hawks in Syria. Maintenance lead during the worst of the Iraq surge. She'd kept helicopters flying when enemy fire had torn through hydraulic lines. She'd diagnosed engine failures in sandstorms that reduced visibility to 0. She'd earned her bronze stars the hard way, covered in grease and blood and the kind of fear you never talked about. But none of that showed on the outside. What showed was a young Asian American woman who barely looked old enough to drink. 5'4", slight build. The kind of face that made gate agents ask if she needed help finding her parents. Maya had learned to live with it. In her world, competence spoke louder than appearance. Eventually, the gate agent scanned her boarding pass and frowned. "There's been a change to your seat assignment, ma'am." Maya's stomach tightened. Here it comes, she thought. The downgrade, the computer error that somehow always affected people who looked like her. But the agent smiled. "Complimentary upgrade to first class, seat 4A. Maya blinked. "I'm sorry, first class," the agent repeated, handing her a new boarding pass. "Enjoy your flight, Sergeant." For a moment, Maya just stood there, holding the pass like it might evaporate. Complimentary upgrades didn't happen to her. They happened to business travelers in expensive suits, not soldiers in worn jackets carrying duffel bags that smelled faintly of helicopter fuel. But the pass was real. Seat 4A, first class. She walked down the jetway with something unfamiliar flickering in her chest. It took her a moment to identify it. Hope. Maybe today would be different. First class smelled like money. Leather seats. Fresh flowers. That particular scent of expensive cologne and self-satisfaction that seemed to hang in the air like invisible fog. Maya found seat 4A window, plenty of legroom, the kind of space she hadn't experienced since, well, ever. She stowed her duffel beneath the footrest and settled in. Around her, other first-class passengers were doing first-class things. Ordering champagne, opening laptops, speaking in the quiet, confident tones of people who'd never had to justify their presence anywhere. Maya pulled out her worn copy of Army Aviation Maintenance Manual FM 304500. Light reading for the 8-hour flight home. She'd barely opened it when she felt eyes on her. 2 rows back, 2 men in civilian clothes were staring. Not subtly, not politely. The kind of staring that felt like hands on her skin. Maya didn't look up. She'd learned long ago that engaging only made things worse. But she cataloged them automatically the way you cataloged potential threats in a combat zone. Both white, both early 40s, both with the bearing of career military despite the civilian clothes. Naval Academy rings on their right hands. Anchor tattoos visible beneath rolled sleeves. Officers, definitely. The kind who'd spent their careers giving orders from comfortable distances. One was heavy-set, with a florid face that suggested too many embassy dinners. The other was leaner, sharper, with cold blue eyes that reminded Maya of the officers who'd made her first deployment hell. Lieutenant Commander Derek Walsh, Lieutenant James Porter. She'd learn their names later. For now, they were just the problem. Walsh leaned toward Porter, not bothering to lower his voice. "You seeing this?" Porter's lip curled. "Hard to miss." "What the hell is she doing up here?" Maya turned a page. Her jaw tightened, but her expression remained neutral. 12 years of practice. 12 years of swallowing responses that would only make things worse. Diversity quota. Porter said loud enough for half the cabin to hear. "Has to be. No way she paid for that seat. Or Daddy's a general, pulled some strings for his little princess." They both laughed. The sound was ugly. The specific ugliness of men who'd never been challenged, never been checked, never faced consequences for the casual cruelty they dispensed like spare change. Maya's hand tightened on her book. She thought about the bronze stars in her duffel. The Purple Heart she never talked about. The lives she'd saved when aircraft that should have crashed somehow kept flying because she understood machines the way some people understood music. But she said nothing. Because she'd learned that men like these didn't change their minds based on evidence. They changed their minds based on power. And right now, despite everything she'd accomplished, she had none. "Hey!" Walsh was addressing someone else now. "Flight attendant, excuse me." A young woman in a crisp uniform approached, professional smile firmly in place. Her name tag read Jennifer. "Yes, sir. How can I help?" Walsh gestured toward Maya with his champagne glass. "There's been some kind of mistake with the seating. That girl back there, she's clearly not supposed to be in first class." Jennifer's smile flickered. "Sir, I'm not sure what you—" "Look at her." Porter joined in, voice dripping condescension. "Does she look like she belongs here, with the real passengers?" Maya kept her eyes on her book. The words had stopped making sense 3 paragraphs ago, but she wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing her react. "I'm sure there's just been a computer error," Walsh continued smoothly. "These things happen, but my colleague and I were naval officers. We've paid for our seats, and it's frankly uncomfortable having that sitting up here with us." Jennifer looked deeply uncomfortable. "Sir, I can't just get your supervisor." Walsh's voice hardened. "Now." The flight attendant hurried away. Maya finally looked up, meeting Walsh's eyes for the first time. He smiled at her, the smile of a man who knew he was about to win. "Nothing personal, sweetheart," he said. "But there's an order to things, and you're clearly out of order." Maya held his gaze. "I have a valid boarding pass for this seat." "Sure you do," Porter snorted. "And I'm sure whatever affirmative action program got you that pass felt very good about themselves. But this is the real world, honey. In the real world, things have a way of sorting themselves out." "She speaks," Walsh said with mock surprise. I was starting to think maybe she didn't understand English. The passengers around them had gone quiet. Maya could feel their attention, some sympathetic, most simply uncomfortable, a few nodding along with the officers as if this were all perfectly reasonable. No one spoke up. No one ever did. The senior flight attendant arrived, an older woman with graying hair and tired eyes. Her name tag read Margaret. "What seems to be the problem?" Walsh launched into his explanation, computer errors, seating irregularities, the discomfort of paying customers. He didn't use slurs. He didn't have to. His meaning was perfectly clear without them. Margaret listened with the expression of someone who'd had this conversation 100 times before. When Walsh finished, she turned to Maya. "Ma'am, may I see your boarding pass?" Maya handed it over. Margaret examined it, frowned, checked something on her tablet, and frowned again. "There does seem to be an irregularity with the upgrade authorization," she said finally. "I'm very sorry, but I'm going to have to ask you to return to your original seat." Maya's stomach dropped. "My boarding pass says 4A. "Yes, but the original booking was for economy. Row 38. Until we can sort out the authorization issue, I'm afraid—" She didn't finish. She didn't have to. Maya looked at Margaret, at Jennifer, who wouldn't meet her eyes, at the other passengers who were suddenly very interested in their phones and magazines and anything that wasn't this conversation. "I understand," Maya said quietly. She gathered her duffel, stood, and stepped into the aisle. Walsh raised his champagne glass in mock salute. "Back where you belong, sweetheart. Better luck next time." Porter laughed. "Maybe in another 20 years she'll be ready for first class, if she works really, really hard." Maya walked past them without a word. Her face was stone. Her spine was steel. But inside, something was cracking, the same thing that had cracked during her first deployment, when a superior officer had told her that women didn't belong in aviation during her second deployment, when she'd been passed over for promotion in favor of a man with half her experience during every moment of her career, when she'd been reminded that no matter what she accomplished, there would always be men who saw only what she looked like, not what she could do. She reached row 38. Seat C. Middle seat, naturally, wedged between a businessman who'd already claimed both armrests and a teenager with headphones blasting music loud enough to hear 3 rows away. Maya stowed her duffel, sat down, buckled her seatbelt, and said nothing. The plane pushed back from the gate at 2:47 p.m. Frankfurt time. Maya stared straight ahead as the safety video played, as the flight attendants demonstrated emergency procedures, as the aircraft taxied and accelerated and lifted into the gray German sky. She was thinking about her grandmother. Grandmother Chen had come to America in 1962 with nothing but a suitcase and a determination that had terrified everyone who knew her. She'd worked 18-hour days in a restaurant kitchen. She'd taught herself English from a dictionary. She'd raised 4 children in a 2-room apartment and sent all of them to college. When Maya had enlisted, her grandmother had cried. Not from sadness, from pride. "You will show them," she'd said, gripping Maya's hands with fingers still strong from decades of work. "You will show them what a Chen can do." But sitting in seat 38C, surrounded by the quiet judgment of passengers who'd witnessed her humiliation, Maya wasn't sure she could show anyone anything. She was just tired. Tired of proving herself. Tired of being dismissed. Tired of fighting battles that never seemed to end. The plane climbed through the clouds. Somewhere ahead, first-class passengers were drinking champagne and laughing about computer errors and little girls who didn't know their place. Maya closed her eyes. She didn't notice the man in the cockpit who'd watched the entire boarding process through a security monitor. Didn't see him pull up the passenger manifest on his tablet and study her service record with growing interest. Didn't hear him say to his first officer, "If anything goes wrong today, I want to know exactly where Sergeant Chen is sitting." Captain Nathan Cole had been flying for 25 years, 15 with the Navy, 10 more with commercial aviation. Before that, he'd been something else entirely. Something that left him with a gold trident pin above his pilot's wings and a set of instincts that most people couldn't begin to understand. One of those instincts was recognizing competence when he saw it. Another was recognizing trouble when it was brewing. And right now, 35,000 feet above the Atlantic, Nathan Cole had a feeling that both were about to become relevant. 2 hours into the flight, Maya was still awake. She couldn't sleep on planes. Never had, probably never would. It wasn't fear she'd flown in aircraft held together by duct tape and prayer, and those hadn't scared her either. It was something else. A kind of hyper-awareness that wouldn't shut off even when she desperately wanted it to. So she sat in her cramped middle seat and listened to the aircraft. Most people didn't understand that planes talked. They thought the hum of engines was just white noise, the vibrations just turbulence, the subtle shifts in pitch, just imagination. But Maya knew better. She'd spent 12 years learning to hear what aircraft were saying, and right now this Boeing 777 was starting to whisper. Something wasn't right. She couldn't identify it yet. Just a feeling, really. A slight irregularity in the engine rhythm that didn't quite match normal cruise parameters. A vibration pattern that felt off. The kind of thing that made experienced crew chiefs pay attention even when they couldn't explain why. Maya glanced around. The businessman beside her was asleep, mouth open, snoring softly. The teenager was lost in his music. Nobody else seemed to notice anything unusual. Of course they didn't. She was probably imagining it. Stress from the humiliation exhaustion from the long trip, her mind playing tricks on her. The aircraft was fine. The aircraft was always fine. She needed to relax, but she couldn't, because the whispering was getting louder. 3 hours into the flight, the first sign appeared. A slight flicker in the cabin lights. So brief that most passengers didn't notice. So brief that Maya almost convinced herself she'd imagined it. Almost. She straightened in her seat, suddenly alert. Her training was kicking in now, the instincts that had been drilled into her through a decade of keeping aircraft alive in impossible conditions. Electrical anomaly. That's what the flicker meant. Somewhere in the plane's systems, something was drawing power. It shouldn't be drawing or losing power. It shouldn't be losing. It could be nothing. Planes had minor electrical glitches all the time. It could also be the first domino in a cascade that ended with 180 people in the Atlantic. Maya listened harder. The engine rhythm was definitely irregular, now not enough for most people to notice, but enough for her to be certain. The starboard engine was running slightly rough, the kind of rough that suggested a sensor problem or a fuel flow issue, or half a dozen other possibilities, none of them good. She wanted to say something, to tell someone, to make her way forward and explain to the flight crew that something was wrong, that she could hear it, that they needed to check their instruments. But what would she say? "Excuse me, I was just dragged out of first class for being too young and too female, but I'm actually a Black Hawk crew chief, and I think there might be a problem with your starboard engine." They'd laugh her off the plane, or worse, have her arrested for causing a disturbance. So she sat, and she listened, and she hoped she was wrong. She wasn't. At 3 hours and 47 minutes, the lights flickered again. Longer this time. Long enough for people to look up from their screens with confusion and concern. At 3 hours and 52 minutes, a subtle shudder ran through the airframe. Not turbulence. Maya knew turbulence. This was different. Mechanical. Structural. At 4 hours and 3 minutes, the first wisps of smoke began seeping from the forward ventilation systems. It started slowly. Just a faint haze in the air, barely visible. But Maya smelled it immediately, that acrid, bitter tang of overheated wiring insulation cooking under electrical stress. The smell of systems failing. Her heart rate spiked, then deliberately slowed. Combat training taking over. When everyone else panicked, you slowed down. Took inventory. Figured out what was happening, and what you could do about it. Around her, other passengers were starting to notice. Heads turning toward the ceiling. Noses wrinkling. The first murmurs of concern spreading through the cabin like ripples in a pond. "Is that smoke?" What's that smell? Something's burning. The flight attendants appeared moving quickly but trying not to run. Their smiles were still in place, but the edges were cracking. "Please remain calm and seated," Jennifer announced. "We're investigating a minor technical issue." Minor. Right. Maya watched the smoke thickening. She felt the irregular vibration intensifying beneath her feet. She heard the starboard engine's rhythm becoming more erratic, more desperate, like a heartbeat starting to fail. This wasn't minor. This was catastrophic. And there was nothing she could do about it from seat 38C. In first class, chaos was brewing. Derek Walsh had gone from smug satisfaction to barely contained panic in the span of about 30 seconds. The smoke was thicker up here, closer to the source, whatever it was, and the shuddering in the airframe was more pronounced. "What the hell is happening?" he demanded, grabbing a passing flight attendant. "Why is there smoke? What's wrong with this plane? Sir, please remain seated. The captain will—" "I don't want the captain. I want answers." Walsh's face had gone from florid to pale. "We're paying customers. We deserve to know what's going on." Beside him, James Porter was gripping his armrests so hard his knuckles had gone white. The confident sneer was gone, replaced by something that looked a lot like terror. "Derek," he said, voice cracking. "Derek, this is bad. This is really bad." "Shut up," Walsh snapped. "It's fine. Everything's fine. They have procedures for this kind of thing." "Procedures?" Porter's voice rose. "There's smoke coming from the vents. The plane is shaking. Does that seem like a procedure to you?" Other first-class passengers were joining in now. A businessman demanding to speak to the captain, a woman in pearls crying into her phone, an elderly man praying in Hebrew, his wife's hand clutched in his. The cabin was teetering on the edge of full-scale panic. Then the intercom crackled. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking." The voice was calm. Unnaturally calm. The kind of calm that experienced travelers recognized as the voice pilots used when things had gone seriously wrong. "We are currently experiencing technical difficulties and working through our checklists. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. Flight attendants prepare for possible diversion." The message ended. The silence that followed was worse than the smoke. In the cockpit, Captain Nathan Cole was staring at an instrument panel that had turned into a Christmas tree of warnings. Red lights everywhere. Amber alerts cascading faster than he could process them. The autopilot had given up entirely, its screen blank and useless. Hydraulic pressure was fluctuating wildly. The starboard engine was throwing temperature readings that made no sense, spiking, dropping, spiking again like a fever chart from hell. "This isn't possible," First Officer David Harris said, his voice tight with controlled fear. "Multiple redundant systems can't fail simultaneously. It doesn't happen." "It's happening," Cole replied. "Start working backup protocols, and get me an emergency frequency to Lajes Field." "Lajes? That's the Azores. It's the closest suitable runway for an aircraft in our condition. Make the call." Harris reached for the radio, then stopped. His hand was shaking. Cole noticed. "Lieutenant?" "Sir, I need you focused. Can you do that?" Harris took a breath. Another. The shaking subsided. "Yes, sir." "Good. Now make that call while I try to figure out why my plane is trying to kill itself." Cole turned back to the instruments, his mind racing through possibilities. Electrical cascade triggering false sensor readings. Possible. Hydraulic leak feeding into the wrong systems. Possible. Some kind of software glitch causing the computers to report failures that weren't really there. All possible. None conclusive. And without conclusive diagnosis, he was flying blind in an aircraft that might or might not be falling apart around him. He needed help. Not the kind of help his first officer could provide. Not the kind that came from checklists and procedures. He needed someone who understood aircraft not as systems to be managed, but as machines to be felt. Someone who could hear what the instruments couldn't tell him. He pulled up the passenger manifest on his tablet. There she was. Sergeant First Class Maya Chen, Army Aviation Maintenance, Black Hawk Crew Chief, 3 combat deployments, field repairs under fire, the kind of experience that couldn't be taught in any classroom. He'd watched her get humiliated during boarding, watched the Navy officers mock her, watched the flight attendants bow to pressure, watched a decorated soldier get treated like she didn't matter. It had made him angry then. Now it might save all their lives. Cole stood. "Lieutenant, you have the aircraft." Harris looked up, startled. "Sir, I'm going into the cabin. There's a passenger I need to speak with." "You're leaving the cockpit now. Right now." Cole was already moving toward the door. "Keep us level and keep trying lajes. I'll be back in 60 seconds. He opened the cockpit door and stepped into chaos. The cabin was worse than he'd expected. Smoke hung in the air like fog. Passengers were crying, praying, clutching each other. Flight attendants were moving through the aisles trying to maintain order, but their authority was crumbling by the second. In first class, 2 men in civilian clothes were on their feet, faces red, voices raised. "We demand to know what's happening," the heavy-set one shouted as Cole appeared. "This is unacceptable. We're United States naval officers, and we will not be treated like—" Cole walked past him without a word. "Excuse me, Captain, I'm talking to you." Cole stopped, turned, and gave the man a look that had made hardened seals step back. "Sit down," he said quietly. "Now." The officer's mouth opened, closed. He sat. Cole continued walking. He moved through business class, through the curtain separating the cabins into economy where passengers sat packed together like sardines. His eyes scanned the rows, searching. Row 38. Seat C. There she was. Sergeant First Class Maya Chen sat perfectly still in her cramped middle seat, hands folded in her lap, expression utterly calm. Around her, passengers were whimpering and praying and calling for help. She was just waiting. Like she'd been here before. Like she knew exactly what to do. Cole stopped beside her row. "Sergeant Chen." Maya's head snapped up. Her eyes widened as she took in the captain's uniform, the pilot's wings, and the small gold pin above them. The trident, SEAL Team insignia. She'd only seen a handful in her career, always on people whose reputations preceded them. "Sir," she said carefully, "Army Aviation Maintenance, Crew Chief on Black Hawks, combat deployments to Syria and Iraq, field repairs under fire." Cole's voice was clipped urgent. "Is that accurate?" "Yes, sir." "Then I need you in my cockpit, right now." And the businessman in the aisle seat spluttered. "What her, she's just a— Move!" Cole's voice left no room for argument. The businessman scrambled out of the way. Maya unbuckled and stood. Around her, passengers stared with expressions ranging from confusion to desperate hope. "Captain," she said as she stepped into the aisle. "What's happening? Multiple system failures that my instruments can't explain. I need someone who can diagnose mechanical problems without relying on computers that are lying to me." He started walking. "Can you do that?" "I've been diagnosing problems for the last hour. Your starboard engine is running rough. Sensor malfunction feeding false data, probably caused by electrical interference from whatever's generating that smoke." Cole stopped walking, turned to look at her. "You diagnosed that from your seat in economy." "I've been listening. The aircraft's been talking since somewhere over Ireland. Most people can't hear it." "But you can." "Yes, sir, I can." For a moment, something flickered across Cole's weathered face. Relief, maybe. Or recognition. The look of one professional acknowledging another. Then let's go save this plane. They were halfway to the cockpit when Derek Walsh stepped into the aisle. His face was pale and sweating, but his voice still carried that particular tone of entitled authority. Wait just a minute. You can't bring her up there. She's not qualified. She's just a what? Cole stopped, his voice dangerously quiet. Walsh hesitated. She's a child. Look at her. She's practically a teenager. Whatever's happening, you need real expertise, not some diversity hire pretending to be. Sergeant Chen has more turbine experience than my entire flight crew combined. Cole's voice cut like a blade. She's kept aircraft flying in conditions that would have grounded this plane permanently. You want to help? Sit down, shut up, and pray that she's as good as her service record says she is. Walsh's mouth opened, closed. He had nothing. Now, Cole continued, leaning close enough that only Walsh could hear. If you interfere again, I will have you restrained for the duration of this emergency. And when we land, if we land, I will personally ensure that your commanding officer receives a detailed report of your conduct. Are we clear? Walsh sat down. Cole turned back to Maya. Sorry about that. Don't be, she said quietly. I've dealt with worse. I imagine you have. He gestured toward the front of the cabin. Shall we? They walked toward the cockpit together. Behind them, every eye in the plane watched them go. The SEAL captain and the young sergeant, the only two people on the aircraft who didn't look afraid. The cockpit door opened, and Maya Chen stepped into the space where 180 lives would be saved or lost. The cockpit was smaller than she'd imagined, louder, hotter. Warning lights painted the instrument panels in angry reds and ambers. Alarms competed for attention at frequencies designed to trigger immediate response. The smell of overheated electronics was stronger here, concentrated in the confined space. First Officer Harris looked up as they entered, confusion and fear battling on his face. Captain, who is Sergeant First Class Chen, Army Aviation Maintenance. She's going to help us figure out why our plane is trying to kill itself. Cole slid back into the left seat. Staff Sergeant Cockpit Observer seat. Strap in. Maya dropped into the small jump seat behind them. The 4-point harness felt familiar. She'd worn similar restraints in Blackhawks for hundreds of hours. Her hands moved automatically, muscle memory taking over while her eyes adjusted to the chaos of the instrument panel. Situation report, Cole said. Hydraulic pressure still fluctuating. Starboard engine temperature readings are all over the place. Autopilot is completely dead, and I'm getting conflicting data from at least 3 different navigation systems. Harris shook his head. It's like the entire plane is having a stroke. Maya leaned forward, eyes moving across the displays with the systematic approach she'd developed over years of troubleshooting under pressure. She tuned out the alarms, ignored the flashing lights, and focused on patterns. The temperature readings are false, she said after 20 seconds. Both men turned to look at her. How can you know that? Harris demanded. Look at the exhaust pattern visible through the window. It doesn't match thermal stress signatures, and the vibration frequency is wrong. Maya pointed to a secondary display. Your starboard engine isn't overheating. It's getting bad data from a sensor that's been compromised by whatever electrical cascade is happening. Cole's hand moved to the throttle controls. So if I've been backing off power based on those readings, you've been starving the engine. It's running rough because it's not getting enough fuel, not because it's failing. Son of a bitch. Cole adjusted the throttle carefully. The starboard engine's rhythm immediately smoothed out. Harris stared at Maya like she'd performed a magic trick. What else? Cole asked. Maya was already analyzing the next problem. Your hydraulic leak isn't where your diagnostics think it is. The pressure loss pattern doesn't match the indicated failure point. Then where is it? Crossfeed valve between primary and auxiliary systems. It's stuck partially open bleeding pressure into the wrong circuit. That's why your diagnostics are confused. The leak is real, but it's happening in a place the computer isn't monitoring. Cole looked at Harris. Manual override. Reroute through auxiliary. Harris hesitated. "Do it," Cole ordered. The first officer's hands moved across the controls. Hydraulic pressure stabilized. The rudder response smoothed out. "This is insane," Harris muttered. "She's diagnosing problems that our systems can't even see." "That's because your systems aren't designed to listen," Maya said simply. "They're designed to read sensors and follow procedures. When the sensors lie and the procedures don't cover what's happening, the systems are useless." "And you're not useless," Cole said. It wasn't a question. "I've patched this kind of failure configuration before. In combat, under fire. Your aircraft is more sophisticated, but the fundamental physics are the same. Metal and pressure and electrical current work the same way whether you're over Afghanistan or the Atlantic." Cole turned to face her directly. His expression was impossible to read. "Staff Sergeant Chen," he said, "you're not leaving this cockpit until we're on the ground. Clear?" Maya met his eyes. "Yes, sir." "Good." He turned back to the instruments. "Now let's talk about where we're going to put this bird down before anything else decides to break." The next 15 minutes dissolved into rhythm of crisis and correction. Maya worked through the remaining system failures with methodical precision. She identified a fuel flow imbalance the computer had missed. She recalibrated a navigation sensor using manual inputs when electronics gave conflicting readings. She provided running commentary on mechanical stress patterns that kept them ahead of failures before they became catastrophic. And through it all, she could feel the aircraft struggling. This was the kind of emergency that aerospace engineers designed redundant systems to prevent. Multiple critical failures happening simultaneously, creating conditions that no single procedure could address. The kind of emergency that turned routine flights into case studies in aviation safety courses. The kind of emergency that usually ended with everyone dead. "Laje's field confirms they can take us," Harris reported. "Portuguese airbase in the Azores, 8,000-foot runway emergency equipment standing by." "Distance?" Cole asked. 500 nautical miles, approximately 90 minutes at current speed. Cole looked at Maya. "Can we make it?" She considered the question carefully. The starboard engine was stable now, but running on borrowed time. The hydraulics were patched, but not fixed. A bad turbulence encounter could shake loose the improvised repairs. The electrical cascade was still ongoing, and there was no way to predict what might fail next. "Honestly," she said, "I don't know. The aircraft is holding together, but it's fighting us. If we can avoid any major additional stresses, no severe weather, no sudden maneuvers, we have a chance." "A chance?" Harris repeated bitterly. "That's the best we've got. Right now, that's better than the alternative." Maya's voice was calm, matter of fact, the voice of someone who'd faced worse odds and survived. "The alternative is trying to ditch in the Atlantic with compromised systems. The survival rate for that is approximately 0. Silence in the cockpit. Then Cole nodded. "Laje's field it is. Let's get these people home." He began adjusting course hands light on the controls, working with the wounded aircraft instead of against it. Behind him, Maya watched the instruments and listened to the engines and felt the subtle vibrations that told her the story the computers couldn't. They were flying on a wing and a prayer. And right now, Maya Chen was the prayer. Back in the cabin, passengers had settled into the peculiar quiet of people waiting for news they weren't sure they wanted to hear. The smoke had thinned somewhat ventilation systems doing their job despite the electrical problems. But the smell lingered, and so did the fear. People held hands with strangers. Parents clutched children close. A priest was quietly offering prayers to anyone who wanted them. In first class, Derek Walsh and James Porter sat in silence. The confidence was gone. The superiority was gone. The smirks and the jokes about diversity hires and little girls playing soldier, all of it, had evaporated the moment smoke started pouring from the vents. Now they were just two frightened men in expensive seats, waiting to learn if they were going to die. Walsh kept replaying the moment in his head. The captain walking past him, without acknowledgement. The cold dismissal that had cut deeper than any reprimand. The way Cole had looked at him not with anger, but with something worse. Contempt. The woman he'd mocked. The child he'd demanded be removed from first class. She was up there now in the cockpit, apparently doing something important enough that the captain had come personally to get her, while Walsh sat here useless, waiting for her to save his life. Beside him, Porter was praying. Actually praying, lips moving silently, hands clasped in his lap. Porter, who'd once bragged about being too rational for religion. Porter, who'd laughed at chaplains and mocked anyone who found comfort in faith. Fear had a way of clarifying things. "I was wrong," Porter whispered suddenly. Walsh looked at him. "What? I was wrong about her, about everything." Porter's voice cracked. "If we don't make it, we're going to make it." "If we don't," Porter insisted, "I need you to know that I'm sorry, for all of it. The things I've said, the people I've looked down on, the way I've treated—" He couldn't finish. He didn't need to. Walsh stared at his friend, at the fear in his eyes, at the regret that had come too late to matter. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Me too." They sat in silence after that. Two men who'd spent their careers believing they knew what competence looked like, finally understanding that they'd been wrong all along. Somewhere over the Atlantic, the storm found them. It started with lightning on the horizon, jagged forks splitting the darkness like cracks in reality. Then came the turbulence. Not the gentle bumps of normal flight, but violent shaking that threw passengers against their restraints and sent anything unsecured flying through the cabin. In the cockpit, alarms screamed. "We're heading straight into a cell," Harris reported, his voice tight. "No way around it. The system extends for 100 miles in either direction. Then we go through." Cole's hands were steady on the controls. "Sergeant Chen." Maya was gripping the edges of her jump seat, eyes fixed on the instruments. The aircraft was bucking and rolling like a wild horse, every impact sending new stress through systems that were already compromised. "The patches are holding," she reported. "But the crossfeed valve is under pressure. If we take a severe hit, it could fail completely. What happens then? We lose hydraulic steering. You'd have to fly on engine thrust alone." Cole absorbed this information without visible reaction. "Have you done that before, flown on thrust differential? In simulation, and once in a Blackhawk over Mosul when our tail rotor took damage." Maya paused. "We made it. Then we'll make it now." Lightning struck close enough to illuminate the cockpit in electric blue. Thunder rolled through the aircraft like a physical force. Passengers screamed. The plane dropped suddenly hard enough to slam everyone against their restraints. "Altitude," Harris shouted. "I see it!" Cole fought the controls, trying to bring the nose up without overstressing the airframe. "Come on, baby. Work with me." Maya watched the hydraulic pressure readings. They were fluctuating wildly now, the patched system struggling to handle the stress of the storm. "If it failed, compensate 2 degrees right," she called out. "The starboard engine is fighting you. It's not giving consistent power in the turbulence." Cole adjusted. The aircraft steadied slightly. "Good. Now ease off the collective. Don't try to muscle through, let her flex. She's designed for this." "She's designed for normal conditions," Harris muttered. "Not for flying through a hurricane with half her systems offline." "She'll hold." Maya's voice carried absolute certainty. "I've seen worse. I've fixed worse. This aircraft wants to fly. We just have to let her. Another lightning strike. Another bone-jarring impact. The airframe groaned like a living thing in pain. But it held. They flew through the storm for 15 minutes that felt like 15 hours. Maya called out adjustments, constantly reading the aircraft's responses to each gust and compensating before problems could cascade. Cole followed her guidance with the trust of one professional recognizing another. Gradually, impossibly, the turbulence began to ease. The clouds thinned, the lightning faded to distant flickers, and there ahead of them the first stars began appearing in a clearing sky. "We're through," Harris said, disbelief in his voice. "We actually made it through." "Not through yet," Cole replied. "We've still got a landing to make, but that was good work, Sergeant. Damn good work." Maya allowed herself one small breath of relief. "Thank you, sir." "Don't thank me yet. The hard part is coming." He was right. Through the cockpit windows, the Azores were beginning to appear on the horizon, a dark smudge against the lighter darkness of the ocean. Laje's field was down there somewhere, with its 8,000-foot runway and its emergency equipment and its promise of solid ground. But first, they had to get down. And Maya knew from the sounds the aircraft was making, from the way systems were still struggling, from everything her training had taught her, the landing was going to be the hardest thing any of them had ever done. She looked at the wounded aircraft, at the instruments still flashing warnings, at the two men who were trusting her to help bring them home. Then she took another breath and prepared to finish what she'd started. The Azores grew larger through the cockpit windows, but Maya barely noticed. Her entire focus was locked on the instrument panel where new warnings were cascading faster than she could process. "Fuel crossfeed is destabilizing," she called out. "The storm stress reopened the valve issue." Cole's jaw tightened. "How bad? We're bleeding fuel into the wrong tank. At current rate, we've got maybe 40 minutes before we're running on fumes." Harris punched numbers into his calculator with shaking hands. "Laje's is 32 minutes out. That's cutting it close." "Then we don't waste time." Cole's voice carried steel. "Sergeant Chen, can you stabilize it?" Maya was already running calculations in her head. The crossfeed valve was mechanical. No amount of software adjustment would fix a physical problem. But maybe she could work around it. "I can try to balance the fuel burn manually. If I call out adjustments to the throttle, we can compensate for the leak. It's not a fix, but it might buy us the time we need." "Do it." Maya leaned forward, eyes locked on the fuel flow indicators. "Reduce starboard throttle by 3%. Now." Cole adjusted. The fuel imbalance shifted slightly. "Good. Hold that. Port throttle up 2% to compensate for the power loss." Another adjustment. The aircraft's rhythm smoothed out marginally. "It's working," Harris breathed. "How the hell is she doing this?" "By listening," Maya said simply. "The gauges tell you numbers. The aircraft tells you truth." They flew in tense silence for the next several minutes, Maya calling out micro-adjustments every 30 seconds. It was exhausting work, the kind of sustained concentration that drained you faster than physical labor. But she'd done this before in Blackhawks over hostile territory, when getting it wrong meant her crew didn't come home. She wasn't going to get it wrong now. Then the starboard engine coughed. Not a stutter. Not a hiccup. A full gut-wrenching cough that made the entire aircraft shudder. "What was that?" Harris's voice pitched higher. Maya's blood ran cold. She knew that sound. She'd heard it exactly twice before in her career, and both times it had preceded catastrophic engine failure. "Compressor stall," she said, forcing her voice to stay level. "The engine's choking on its own turbulence." "Can you fix it?" "Not from here. It needs to clear itself or—" The engine coughed again, harder. The aircraft lurched to the right. "Or what?" Cole demanded, fighting the controls. "Or it flames out completely." The words hung in the cockpit like a death sentence. A single-engine landing wasn't impossible. Commercial pilots trained for it constantly. But a single-engine landing in a damaged aircraft with compromised hydraulics during a nighttime approach to an unfamiliar runway. The odds weren't good. "Come on," Cole muttered, hands steady despite everything. "Come on, baby. Don't quit on me now." The engine coughed a third time, and then impossibly it smoothed out. "It's clearing," Maya reported, hardly believing her own words. "Compressor's stabilizing. We've still got both engines." Harris slumped in his seat. "Jesus Christ." "Don't celebrate yet," Cole said. "That engine's on borrowed time. We need to get this bird on the ground before it decides to quit for good." He keyed the radio. "Laje's approach this is transatlantic 847. Declaring emergency. We have multiple system failures and possible engine problems. Requesting immediate priority handling." The response came back instantly, the Portuguese controller's English crisp and professional. "Transatlantic 847 Laje's approach. You are cleared direct to runway 27. Emergency equipment is standing by. Winds are 240 at 15, gusting 25. Altimeter 2987. Direct runway 27, 2987, Cole acknowledged. "Be advised we may have limited hydraulic control for landing." A pause. Then, "Understood 847. We'll have everything ready for you. Good luck." Cole clicked off the radio and turned to Maya. "All right, Sergeant. Talk to me about the hydraulics. What are we looking at?" Maya had been monitoring the pressure readings throughout the conversation. The news wasn't good. "Primary system is at 60% and dropping. Auxiliary is holding at 45. That's enough for basic control surfaces, but what? Landing gear deployment requires a minimum of 50% in the primary circuit. We're below that threshold." Harris swore under his breath. "So we can't get the gear down?" "Not through normal means," Maya said. "But there's a manual override. Gravity drop. It's slower and harder to control, but it should work." The mechanism relies on hydraulic locks to secure the gear in the down position. With pressure this low, the locks might not fully engage. Cole processed this, meaning the gear could collapse on landing. It's possible. What's the alternative? Belly landing, no gear at all. The cockpit went silent. A belly landing meant sliding down the runway on the aircraft's fuselage. It meant sparks and fire and structural damage. It meant hoping the fuel didn't ignite, hoping the aircraft didn't cartwheel, hoping the passengers survived the impact. "We try the gear," Cole decided. "If it locks, great. If it doesn't, at least we've got something under us. And if it collapses on touchdown, then we deal with it." Cole's voice was granite. "One problem at a time, Sergeant. That's how we get through this." Maya nodded. He was right. She'd spent too many years dealing with impossible situations to know that the only way out was forward. "One problem at a time," she agreed. 20 minutes to Laje's field. 20 minutes to find out if they'd live or die. Maya settled deeper into her seat and kept listening to the wounded aircraft coaxing it forward with every ounce of skill she possessed. Behind them, 180 passengers sat in terrified silence, most of them praying, none of them knowing that their lives depended on a young woman they'd watched get humiliated just hours ago. The same woman who was now the only thing standing between them and the Atlantic Ocean. The descent toward Laje's field began with a subtle shift in engine pitch that made Maya's stomach tighten. "Starboard engine's running hot again," she reported. "Not critical, but it's climbing." Cole nodded without looking up from his instruments. "How hot?" "Approaching yellow. If it hits red, we'll need to throttle back significantly." "Which means single engine approach." "Effectively, yes." Harris was monitoring the fuel situation with growing anxiety. We've got maybe 15 minutes of fuel remaining. That's accounting for the leak. 15 minutes is plenty if nothing else goes wrong, Cole said. When has nothing else gone wrong tonight? Harris muttered. As if on cue, the hydraulic pressure alarm began blaring. Maya's eyes snapped to the gauge. Primary circuit was dropping faster now, 55%, 52-49. We're losing pressure faster than before, she called out. Something's given way, a seal maybe, or a secondary leak. Can you localize it? Not without getting under the aircraft. Maya's mind raced through possibilities. But based on the rate of loss, I'd guess the main gear actuator line. The storm stress probably cracked a fitting. The main gear. Harris's voice was hollow. That's the one we need for landing. Yes. Cole's knuckles went white on the control yoke. What's our hydraulic floor for manual gear extension? 30% minimum. We're at 47 and dropping. How long until we hit 30? Maya calculated rapidly. 8 minutes. Maybe 9. And our flight time to Lajes? Harris checked his instruments. 12 minutes. The math was brutal. They would run out of hydraulic pressure before they reached the runway. We need to drop the gear now, Maya said, before we lose the ability to do it at all. Cole understood immediately. If we drop it now, we'll be flying with gear down for the rest of the approach. That means more drag, more fuel consumption, less maneuverability. Better than trying to land with no gear at all. Agreed. Cole keyed the intercom. Cabin crew, this is the captain. Prepare for emergency landing. Passengers should assume brace positions on my command. He turned to Harris. Manual gear extension. Do it now. Harris's hand moved to the manual override lever. Gear going down. The sound was different from a normal gear deployment, no smooth hydraulic whine, just the grinding clunk of mechanical systems dropping under gravity. The aircraft shuddered as 3 massive wheel assemblies fell from their housings. Maya watched the indicator lights. Left main gear green. Right main gear green. Nose gear amber. Nose gear isn't locked, she reported. The indicator shows it's down, but not secured. Can we get it to lock? Not from here. The hydraulic locks are too weak to engage. Cole absorbed this. So we're landing on 2 good mains and a nose gear that might collapse. That's the situation. Okay. Cole's voice was unnaturally calm. Okay, we can work with that. If the nose comes down hard and the gear folds, we skid on the nose section. Not ideal, but survivable. If the nose digs in and we flip, we won't flip. Cole's certainty was absolute. I've landed worse than this in worse conditions. We're going to bring this bird down smooth and everyone's going to walk away. Maya wanted to believe him. She needed to believe him. But she'd seen too much in her career to believe in certainty anymore. The final approach to Lajes Field was the longest 10 minutes of Maya Chen's life. The runway was visible now, a strip of lights cutting through the darkness of the Atlantic night. Emergency vehicles lined both sides, their red and blue lights flashing like warnings. Lajes Tower Transatlantic 847 on final approach, Cole reported. Be advised we have possible nose gear malfunction, requesting foam on the runway. Understood 847. Foam trucks are deploying now. Runway is yours. Emergency crews standing by. Cole clicked off. All right, here's how this is going to go. I'm going to bring her in as slow and smooth as possible. The moment we touch down, I'm going to keep the nose up as long as I can. The longer we can delay that nose gear touching ground, the slower we'll be when it happens. And if the gear collapses, then we ride it out. Keep the wings level, let the nose skid on the foam, bring her to a stop. He paused. Harris, the moment we're stopped, I want those doors open and slides deployed. Get everyone off this aircraft. Yes, sir. Sergeant Chen. Maya met his eyes. Sir, You've done everything I could have asked. And more. Whatever happens next, I want you to know that. You gave us a chance when we didn't have one. Maya's throat tightened. We're not down yet, Captain. No, but we will be. Cole turned back to the controls. Brace for landing. The aircraft descended through the final 1,000 feet. Maya watched the altimeter unwind. 800, 600, 400. The runway lights grew brighter, closer, more real. At 200 feet, the starboard engine coughed again. Ignore it, Cole said through gritted teeth. We're committed. 100 feet. The runway was rushing up to meet them. 50 feet. Maya could see the foam glistening on the concrete. Flare, Cole announced, pulling back on the yoke. The aircraft's nose rose. The main gear reached for the ground, and then they hit. The impact was brutal, far harder than any normal landing. Maya was slammed against her restraints as the main gear absorbed the shock. The aircraft bounced once, twice, then settled onto the runway with a screech of tortured tires. Nose up! Cole was shouting. Keep her nose up! The aircraft was decelerating rapidly, main gear, holding nose still elevated. Reverse thrust roared. Brakes squealed. For a moment, one beautiful, impossible moment, Maya thought they might make it. Then the nose dropped. The nose gear hit the ground at 60 knots. For a fraction of a second, it held. Maya could see the indicator light flickering between amber and red, the hydraulic locks fighting to engage. The locks failed. The gear collapsed. The aircraft's nose slammed into the runway with a metallic shriek that drowned out everything else. Sparks exploded from the impact point. The smell of burning metal filled the cockpit. Noses down! Harris screamed. We're skidding, but Cole fought the controls trying to keep the aircraft straight as it ground across the foam-covered concrete. The entire airframe was shaking, vibrating, threatening to tear itself apart. 40 knots. 30. 20. They were slowing. They were actually slowing. 10 knots. 5. The aircraft ground to a halt in the center of runway 27. Silence. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Nobody breathed. Then Cole's voice cut through the stillness. Evacuate. Now. Everyone off. Harris was already moving, throwing open the cockpit door. Behind them, the cabin erupted into controlled chaos, flight attendants shouting commands, emergency slides deploying passengers scrambling toward exits. Go, Cole told Maya. Get out. Captain. That's an order, Sergeant. I'm right behind you. Maya unbuckled her harness and pushed toward the cockpit door. The cabin was a blur of motion people climbing over seats, children crying the hiss of deployed slides. She moved on autopilot muscle memory, carrying her toward the nearest exit. The emergency slide was a yellow blur. She threw herself onto it without thinking, felt the rush of cold Atlantic air, and then she was on the ground. Solid, beautiful, impossible ground. She stood on shaking legs and turned to look at the aircraft. The 777 sat in the middle of the runway, nose-crumpled emergency lights flashing. Foam trucks were already moving in, spraying retardant on the smoking nose section. Passengers were streaming down slides on both sides, many of them crying, all of them alive. All of them alive. Maya's legs gave out. She dropped to her knees on the cold concrete, hands pressed against the ground, breathing in great gulps of wet Atlantic air. They'd made it. Against every odd, against every failure, against everything that had tried to kill them, they'd made it. Someone touched her shoulder. She looked up to find Captain Cole standing over her, his face streaked with sweat, his uniform rumpled his eyes, carrying an expression she couldn't quite read. You okay, Sergeant? Maya laughed. It came out broken and wet, halfway to a sob. I think so, Good. Cole extended his hand. Because there's about 200 people on this runway who need to know what you did for them tonight. He pulled her to her feet. Around them, the chaos of the emergency response continued, sirens wailing personnel, shouting passengers being guided toward waiting buses. But in that moment, standing beside the man who'd trusted her when no one else would, Maya Chen felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Pride. Not the bitter pride of proving doubters wrong, not the hollow pride of recognition that came too late, but real pride, the quiet, unshakable pride of knowing you'd been tested beyond your limits and hadn't broken. They'd called her a child. They'd said she didn't belong. They'd dragged her from her seat and sent her back to economy like she didn't matter. And then they'd needed her. And she'd been there. That was enough. The emergency response was still in full swing when the Navy officers appeared. Derek Walsh and James Porter emerged from one of the forward slides, their expensive civilian clothes soaked with sweat, their faces pale. They stumbled onto the runway and stood there looking around with the dazed expressions of men who'd just faced their own mortality. Maya saw them before they saw her. She watched Walsh adjust his shirt with shaking hands, watched Porter lean over and vomit onto the foam-covered concrete. Part of her wanted to walk away, let them deal with their fear and their shame alone. She didn't need anything from them, not apologies, not acknowledgement, not validation. But another part of her, the part that had spent 12 years serving alongside people who didn't always deserve it, knew that wasn't how she operated. She walked toward them. Walsh saw her coming and froze. His face cycled through a dozen emotions in the span of 3 seconds: surprise, shame, fear, and finally something that might have been humility. "Sergeant," his voice cracked. We... "Save it," Maya said quietly. "No, please. What we did, what we said, I said save it." Maya's voice wasn't angry. It was tired. "You don't owe me anything. Not an apology, not an explanation. What you did, you did. What I did. That's the end of it." Porter had straightened up, wiping his mouth. "But you saved our lives. You saved everyone, after you treated me like I didn't matter. Yes." Maya met his eyes. "But that's the thing about service, Lieutenant. You don't get to choose who you serve. You don't get to decide who deserves to be saved and who doesn't. You just do the job." "That's very..." Walsh swallowed hard. "That's very generous of you." "It's not generous. It's just true." Maya turned to go, then stopped. "But I'll tell you something else that's true. What you did on that plane, the way you treated me, the way you had me removed, that says more about you than it ever said about me. You're going to have to live with that knowledge. How you do it is up to you." She walked away without waiting for a response. Behind her, 2 Navy officers stood in the middle of a foam-covered runway, watching the woman they'd dismissed disappear into the chaos of the emergency response. Neither of them said a word. There wasn't anything left to say. The next hour dissolved into interviews and medical checks, and the grinding machinery of post-emergency procedures. Maya answered questions from airport officials, from airline representatives, from Portuguese authorities, who seemed alternately fascinated and confused by her role in the landing. Through it all, she kept one eye on the passengers. Most of them were clustered in a hastily opened terminal section, wrapped in emergency blankets, drinking coffee provided by airport staff. Many were on phones, calling loved ones, crying with relief. A few sat alone, staring at nothing, still processing what they'd survived. The children had recovered fastest, as children always did. Maya watched a little girl, maybe 6 years old, showing her mother how she'd gone down the emergency slide. Her voice was bright with excitement, as if the whole thing had been an adventure designed for her entertainment. Children were resilient like that. They bounced back from trauma that would break adults. Maya wished she could remember what that felt like. A commotion near the terminal entrance caught her attention. Captain Cole was standing with a group of airline officials, his voice raised. "I don't care about your procedures. That woman was instrumental in saving this aircraft. She deserves recognition, not interrogation." "Captain, we understand, but protocols didn't keep us in the air. She did." Sergeant Chen diagnosed failures that your instruments missed, provided real-time guidance that kept our engines running and never lost focus for a single second, despite having been publicly humiliated by passengers less than 4 hours earlier. The official's face reddened. "We're not denying her contribution." "Then stop treating her like a suspect and start treating her like the hero she is." Maya approached the group. "Captain, it's fine. I don't need—" "Yes, you do." Cole turned to face her. "You need these people to understand what happened up there. Not for your sake, but for the sake of everyone else who looks like you, or acts like you, or doesn't fit the profile that men like those Navy officers expect." He turned back to the officials. "This woman is a decorated combat veteran. She has more experience with aircraft systems than most of your maintenance staff combined. And when everything was falling apart at 35,000 feet, she was the calmest, most competent person on that aircraft, including me." The lead official shifted uncomfortably. "Captain, no one is questioning." "Everyone was questioning. That's the whole point." Cole's voice dropped. "On that plane, she was judged the moment she sat down. Not on her skills, not on her experience, not on anything that actually mattered, just on what she looked like, how old she seemed. And you know what? If this had been a routine flight, no one would have ever known they were wrong. She would have walked off that plane and those officers would have gone home thinking they'd been right all along." He paused. "But it wasn't a routine flight, and now everyone knows exactly who the real professional was." The silence that followed was uncomfortable. The officials exchanged glances, clearly unused to being lectured by pilots they'd probably have to work with again. Finally, the lead official nodded. "We'll make sure Sergeant Chen's contribution is fully documented in the incident report." And he hesitated. "I'll personally ensure she receives whatever recognition is appropriate." "You do that," Cole said. He turned and walked toward Maya, leaving the officials to their paperwork. "You didn't have to do that," Maya said quietly. "Yes, I did." Cole's expression softened slightly. "Because if I didn't, this whole thing would get buried. The airline would credit their procedures. The authorities would credit their equipment. And you'd be a footnote in a report that no one ever reads." "I'm fine with being a footnote." "Well, I'm not." Cole stopped in front of her. "What you did tonight, that's not footnote material. That's front-page material. And I'm going to make damn sure everyone knows it." Maya didn't know what to say. She'd spent so many years being overlooked, underestimated, dismissed. The idea that someone would fight for her recognition was almost incomprehensible. "Thank you," she finally managed, "for trusting me. In the cockpit." "I didn't trust you," Cole said. "I knew you. The moment I saw your service record on that manifest, I knew exactly who you were, what you'd done, what you were capable of." He paused. "The only question was whether I'd need you, and when the answer turned out to be yes, there was no doubt in my mind." "How did you know just from a manifest?" Cole smiled slightly. "I've spent my whole career working with people who don't fit the profile. SEALs who look like accountants. Analysts who could outshoot any operator. The best don't advertise. They just perform when it counts. And you saw that in me. I saw someone who'd earned 2 Bronze Stars by age 28. Someone who'd kept Blackhawks flying in combat conditions. Someone who'd been wounded in action and gone back for more." His smile faded. "And then I saw that same someone get dragged out of first class by her own countrymen. So yeah, I was paying attention. Maya felt her throat tighten. I didn't know anyone was watching. Someone's always watching, Sergeant. The question is whether they're watching to help or watching to hurt. Cole glanced back at the runway, where the damaged aircraft was now surrounded by maintenance crews. Tonight, I'm glad I was in a position to do the former. The passengers were finally being loaded onto buses for transport to hotels when Maya saw the little girl again. She was maybe 6 with blonde pigtails and a gap-toothed smile. Her mother was carrying her, one arm wrapped protectively around the child's small body. As they passed Maya, the little girl pointed. "Mommy, that's the lady from the airplane." The mother stopped. She looked at Maya with an expression of dawning recognition. "You're her, the one they called to the cockpit." Maya nodded. "Yes, ma'am." The mother's eyes filled with tears. "My husband called from the hospital. My daughter has a condition. We were flying home for treatment. If this plane had—" She couldn't finish. "But it didn't," Maya said gently. "Everyone's safe. Because of you. Because of a lot of people. The captain, the crew, everyone who stayed calm." The mother shook her head. "No. I was watching when they walked you out of first class. I saw how they treated you. And then when they called you forward when you were the one they needed." She shifted her daughter to one arm and reached out to grip Maya's hand. "Thank you for everything you are." The little girl leaned forward. "Are you a superhero?" Maya almost laughed, almost cried, settled for something in between. "No, sweetheart. I'm just a soldier. My daddy says soldiers are superheroes. He says they keep people safe." "Then I guess maybe he's right." The little girl nodded seriously. "I'm going to be a soldier when I grow up. Or maybe an airplane fixer, like you." Maya smiled a real smile, the first one she'd felt in hours. "You can be both. I am." The mother thanked her again and carried her daughter toward the waiting buses. Maya watched them go, something warm and unfamiliar spreading through her chest. Maybe that was enough. Maybe in the end that was all any of it was for. Not the medals, not the recognition, not proving the doubters wrong, just the chance to be there when someone needed you. The chance to make sure a little girl got home to her father. Maya turned and walked toward the terminal, toward coffee and warmth, and the long process of figuring out what came next. Behind her, the damaged aircraft sat on the runway like a monument to what they'd survived. And somewhere in the night sky, stars were appearing through the breaking clouds. The same Atlantic sky they'd almost fallen from, now peaceful and silver under distant moonlight. They'd made it. All of them. Together. The terminal coffee was terrible, but Maya drank it anyway. Her hands had finally stopped shaking, though she wasn't sure when that had happened. Time had become elastic since the landing minutes, stretching into hours, compressing into moments. She was sitting alone in a corner of the makeshift passenger holding area when her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. News saying plane emergency landed. "You okay?" Maya typed back. "I'm fine. Long story. Call you tomorrow." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then, "I love you. Be safe." Maya stared at those words until her vision blurred. She'd spent so many years being strong, being tough, being the soldier who never cracked. But something about her mother's simple message broke through defenses she hadn't even known she was maintaining. She wiped her eyes quickly, hoping no one had noticed. "Sergeant Chen." Maya looked up. A woman in a crisp airline uniform was standing over her holding a clipboard. Behind her, 2 men in suits waited with the particular patience of people who got paid to wait. "Yes. I'm Sarah Mitchell, Director of Passenger Relations for the airline. These gentlemen are from our corporate office in Atlanta. They flew in as soon as they heard about the incident." Maya set down her coffee. That was fast. We take situations like this very seriously. Mitchell's smile was professional, practiced. Would you mind coming with us? There are some things we'd like to discuss. Every instinct Maya had developed over 12 years of military service told her to be careful. Corporate executives didn't fly overnight to talk to random passengers, not unless something was happening that she didn't fully understand. Am I in some kind of trouble? Mitchell's smile flickered. Not at all. Quite the opposite, actually. But we'd prefer to have this conversation somewhere more private. Maya glanced around the holding area. Most of the other passengers had been transported to hotels hours ago. Only a handful remained people with complicated travel situations or those still being interviewed by authorities. All right, she said, standing. Lead the way. They led her through a maze of corridors to a small conference room that had clearly been commandeered for the occasion. A long table dominated the space, surrounded by leather chairs that looked far too expensive for an airport. Captain Cole was already there. He stood as Maya entered, his face unreadable. Sergeant. Captain. Maya nodded, then looked at the executives. Someone want to tell me what this is about? The older of the two suits stepped forward. His name tag read Harrison Wells, VP of Operations. Please have a seat. Can we get you anything, water, something to eat? I'm fine. Maya sat, keeping her posture straight. Just tell me what's going on. Wells exchanged a look with his colleague, then sat across from her. Sergeant Chen, we've spent the last several hours reviewing everything that happened on Flight 847. The flight data recorder, the cockpit voice recorder statements from Captain Cole and First Officer Harris. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. What you did up there was extraordinary. Maya said nothing. She'd learned long ago that when executives started with compliments, the catch was usually hiding right behind them. Extraordinary, Wells repeated. Captain Cole has given us a detailed account of your contributions, the diagnostic insights, the real-time adjustments, the calm under pressure that kept the crew focused when everything was falling apart. I did what anyone with my training would have done. No. Wells shook his head firmly. You did what no one else on that aircraft could have done. And that's exactly why we're here. He slid a folder across the table. Maya looked at it, but didn't reach for it. What's this? An offer. The airline would like to bring you on as a technical consultant, special advisor for maintenance protocols and emergency procedures. You'd work directly with our training division, helping develop new diagnostic approaches based on what you demonstrated tonight. Maya stared at him. You want to hire me? We want to learn from you. The methods you used, listening to the aircraft, diagnosing problems that our instruments missed, that's not something we can replicate with technology alone. We need people who understand machines the way you do. Cole spoke up. It's a good offer, Sergeant. I've seen their preliminary proposal. The salary's substantial, and you'd have real authority to make changes. Maya's mind was racing. 24 hours ago, she'd been a sergeant heading home from a routine assignment. Now, she was being offered a corporate position by one of the largest airlines in the world. What about my military service? We've already spoken with Army Personnel Command, Wells said. Given your current deployment status and the nature of our offer, they're willing to expedite a transition. Honorable discharge with full benefits effective within 30 days. You already spoke to Army personnel. Maya's voice was flat. Without asking me first. Wells had the grace to look uncomfortable. We wanted to ensure the path was clear before presenting the offer. We didn't want to waste your time with something that couldn't happen. That wasn't your decision to make. No, you're right. It wasn't. Wells paused. But the offer stands, Sergeant. This is a genuine opportunity, a chance to use your skills in ways that could help thousands of people. Maya looked at the folder, then at Cole. Then at the executives watching her with the careful expressions of people who thought they already knew her answer. "Can I have some time to think about it?" "Of course. Take as long as you need. We'll be in touch." They shook her hand, and filed out of the room. Cole remained behind. "You're not going to take it," he said. Maya raised an eyebrow. "How do you know?" "Because you've got the same look I had when they offered me a desk job after I left the teams." He smiled slightly. The look of someone who knows exactly who they are and isn't interested in becoming someone else. "It's a good offer." "It's a great offer. Doesn't mean it's right for you." Maya picked up the folder, flipped through its contents without really seeing them. "I've spent 12 years proving myself, fighting for every inch of respect. And now they want to put me in a suit and have me teach other people what I already know. Some people would see that as validation. Some people didn't get dragged out of first class today." Cole nodded slowly. "Fair point." Maya closed the folder and set it down. "What happened to those officers, Walsh and Porter?" "Last I heard, they were on a flight back to Norfolk. Their commanding officer is going to get a very detailed report about their conduct." "Will anything actually happen to them?" Cole's expression hardened. "I'm going to make damn sure of it." What they did wasn't just unprofessional, it was conduct unbecoming. At minimum, they're looking at official reprimands. More likely their careers just hit a wall they're never going to climb over. "I don't want that." Cole looked at her sharply. "What? I don't want their careers ruined. That's not why I did any of this." "Then why did you—" Maya thought about the question. Really thought about it. About the little girl with pigtails who wanted to be a soldier. About her grandmother, who'd come to America with nothing but determination. About every person she'd ever kept safe by doing a job that no one noticed until something went wrong. "Because it needed to be done," she finally said. "Because 180 people needed to get home to their families. Because that's what I signed up for, not to be recognized, not to prove anything, just to be there when someone needed help." Cole studied her for a long moment. "You're a better person than I am, Sergeant. If someone had treated me the way they treated you, I'd want blood. Blood doesn't fix anything. It just creates more wounds." Spoken like someone who's seen too much of it. "Maybe." Maya stood, picking up the folder. "I should go. Figure out where I'm sleeping tonight. The airline's putting all passengers up at the Marriott. I imagine you've got a room waiting." "Probably." She started toward the door, then stopped. "Captain." "Yes." "Why did you come into the cabin when everything was falling apart? You could have just dealt with it yourself, followed your procedures, done everything by the book." Cole smiled a real smile this time, not the careful, professional expression he'd worn with the executives. "Because the book doesn't cover everything. And because I've learned that the best solutions usually come from the people that the book forgot to include." Maya nodded. "Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for being worth seeing." She walked out of the conference room, the folder tucked under her arm, her mind still churning with everything that had happened. Behind her, Captain Nathan Cole watched her go with the quiet satisfaction of a man who'd just witnessed something rare, a person whose character matched their capability tested under the worst possible conditions and found absolutely solid. He'd known a lot of people like that over the years. Most of them were dead now, killed in operations that would never make the newspapers. But this one was alive, and she was going to do something remarkable with that life. He was certain of it. The Marriott lobby was empty when Maya arrived, which suited her fine. She didn't want to talk to anyone, didn't want to explain anything, didn't want to be looked at with recognition or gratitude or any of the other emotions that had been directed at her since the landing. She just wanted to sleep. The front desk clerk handed her a key card. Without comment, the airline had apparently called ahead. "Room 412, 4th floor." She took the elevator up alone, found her door, and let herself into a room that looked exactly like every other hotel room she'd ever stayed in. Generic art on the walls, generic bedspread on the mattress, generic view of a generic parking lot through generic curtains. Home, such as it was. She dropped her duffel by the bed and sat down heavily. The exhaustion hit her all at once, not just physical, but emotional. The kind of bone-deep tiredness that came from hours of sustained crisis, from holding yourself together when everything around you was falling apart. Her phone buzzed again. This time a number she didn't recognize. She answered anyway. "Hello, Sergeant Chen." A woman's voice, professional but warm. "This is Commander Patricia Williams, Naval Aviation Safety Center. I hope I'm not calling too late." Maya glanced at the clock. 3:47 a.m. "It's fine. I wasn't sleeping." "I imagine not." Williams paused. "I've just finished reading Captain Cole's preliminary report. I wanted to reach out personally before the official channels got involved." "Am I in some kind of trouble?" "Quite the opposite. What you did tonight was exceptional. The kind of diagnostic work that saved lives and prevented what could have been a catastrophic accident." Maya said nothing. She was getting tired of being told she was exceptional. "I'm not calling to stroke your ego," Williams continued, as if reading her thoughts. "I'm calling because I have a proposition. And unlike the airline's offer, mine doesn't involve sitting in a conference room teaching theory." "How do you know about the airline's offer?" "I know everything that happens when one of my aircraft nearly falls out of the sky. The point is, I'm offering something different. We're developing a new rapid response team for aviation emergencies. Cross-service, cross-sector. Military, commercial, private. People who can be deployed anywhere in the world when an aircraft is in trouble and needs real-time expertise." Maya sat up straighter. "You're talking about a flying troubleshooting unit." "Exactly. Experts who can diagnose problems, remotely guide crews through emergencies, and when necessary get on aircraft themselves to provide hands-on assistance." "That sounds like science fiction." "It sounded like science fiction until tonight. Now it sounds like the obvious solution to a problem we've been ignoring for too long." Williams' voice sharpened. "We rely too heavily on technology, on sensors and computers and automated systems. But technology fails, and when it does, we need people who can fill the gap. People like me. People exactly like you. I'm not asking you to leave your skills behind, Sergeant. I'm asking you to use them in ways you never imagined." Maya thought about it. About the offer from the airline, comfortable, lucrative, safe. About her current path in the Army, familiar, respected, defined. And about what Williams was describing. Something new. Something unprecedented. Something that could take everything she'd learned and multiply it by 1,000. What would I be doing, specifically? Training, assessment, response. You'd help us identify other people with your abilities. You'd develop protocols for the kind of real-time diagnosis you demonstrated tonight. And when emergencies happen, you'd be part of the team that responds. I'm Army, not Navy. This team isn't about branches. It's about capability. The best people regardless of uniform. Maya was quiet for a long moment. Through the hotel window, she could see the first hints of dawn beginning to lighten the sky. "Can I think about it?" "Take all the time you need. But Sergeant, don't take too long. People like you don't come along often. And I don't want to lose you to a consulting job that wastes half your potential." Williams gave her a contact number and hung up. Maya sat in the darkness, holding her phone, watching the sky slowly brighten. 2 offers in one night. Both of them life-changing. Both of them requiring her to become something different than what she was. She thought about her grandmother again. About the woman who'd come to America with nothing and built a life through sheer determination. What would she say about all this? Maya could almost hear her voice. "You will show them what a Chen can do." but show them that she could sit in a conference room and explain her methods to people who'd never understand that she could respond to emergencies from some command center watching screens while others did the actual work, or that she could be out there in the field, hands-on, doing the thing she was born to do. She knew the answer. She'd known it before. Williams even finished her pitch, but she didn't make the call, not yet, because there was something she needed to do first. The sun was fully up by the time Maya made her way back to the airport. The damaged aircraft had been towed to a maintenance hangar where it sat surrounded by inspectors and technicians and the endless paperwork of post-incident investigation. She talked her way past 3 security checkpoints with her military ID and the sheer force of her presence. Nobody questioned a soldier who walked like she belonged somewhere. She'd learned that lesson her first week in the Army. The hangar was enormous, the kind of space that made human beings look like ants. Maya found the aircraft in the center, elevated on maintenance jacks, its nose section still crumpled from the landing. She stood there for a long time, just looking at it. "I wondered if you'd show up." Captain Cole's voice came from behind her. She turned to find him approaching a cup of coffee in each hand. "Couldn't sleep," she said. "Me neither." He handed her one of the cups. "Figured I'd come say goodbye to the old girl. She saved our lives even if she did try to kill us first." Maya looked at the aircraft, at the damaged nose, the scored fuselage, the emergency slides still dangling from their housings. "She's repairable." "Technically, yes. Economically, probably not. They'll strip her for parts, use the airframe for training, but she'll never fly again." "That seems wrong somehow." "Does it?" Cole sipped his coffee. "Everything has a lifespan, Sergeant. Aircraft, careers, people. The question isn't how long you last, it's what you do with the time you've got." Maya thought about Walsh and Porter, about the little girl with pigtails, about the 180 passengers who'd walked off this aircraft alive because she'd happened to be in the right place at the right time. "I'm going to take Williams' offer." Cole nodded, unsurprised. "I figured you would." "You know about it." "Patricia and I served together. She called me for a reference," and he smiled slightly. "I may have been enthusiastic." "What did you tell her? That you were the best I'd ever seen? That you had instincts that couldn't be taught and skills that couldn't be faked? That if she didn't hire you, she was an idiot?" Maya laughed a genuine laugh, surprising herself. "That's quite a recommendation." "It's the truth." Cole's expression grew serious. "You've got something special, Sergeant. Something most people never develop because they never get tested hard enough. Tonight tested you. And you didn't just pass, you excelled." "I was terrified." "Everyone's terrified. The difference is what you do with that fear." He paused. "You used it as fuel. Most people let it become an anchor." Maya looked at the aircraft again, at the machine she'd kept alive through sheer force of will and 12 years of experience. "What are you going to do now?" Cole shrugged. "Fly, I suppose. That's all I've ever known how to do. No desk job for you. God, no. I'd die of boredom within a month." He smiled. "Besides, someone has to stay up there. Someone has to know what it feels like when everything goes wrong so they can help others when it does. Like you helped me. Like you helped me. Tonight was a team effort, Sergeant. Don't forget that." Maya finished her coffee and set the cup aside. "I should go. Lot to figure out." "Before you do..." Cole reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object. He held it out to her. Maya looked at it. It was a challenge coin, the kind military units gave to recognize exceptional service. But this one wasn't from any unit she recognized. Instead, it bore a simple design wings around a trident with the words, "Those who dare," inscribed around the edge. "What is this? Something I've been carrying for 20 years. A friend gave it to me after my first SEAL deployment. He said it was for people who didn't wait for permission to do the right thing. I can't take this." You can. You earned it. Cole pressed the coin into her hand. Pass it on someday when you find someone who deserves it as much as you do. Maya looked at the coin, at the worn edges that spoke of years of handling, at the weight of history it carried. Thank you, she said, for everything. Thank me by being extraordinary. Cole stepped back. Now go change the world, Sergeant Chen. I'll be watching. He walked away without looking back, leaving Maya alone in the hangar with the damaged aircraft and the coin that felt like both an ending and a beginning. She stood there for a while longer, thinking about everything that had happened. The humiliation, the crisis, the landing, the offers, the conversation with Cole. Then she pulled out her phone and dialed Commander Williams's number. Sergeant Chen, Williams answered on the first ring. Have you made a decision? Yes, ma'am, I'm in. Excellent. Report to Norfolk in 72 hours. We'll have paperwork ready. Yes, ma'am. And Sergeant, welcome to the team. The line went dead. Maya pocketed her phone and looked at the aircraft one last time. Somewhere out there, another plane was taking off. Another crew was running through their checklists. Another set of passengers was settling into seats without knowing what kind of expertise might save their lives someday. Maya Chen was going to make sure someone was always ready to answer that call. She turned and walked out of the hangar into the bright Atlantic morning toward whatever came next. Behind her, the wounded aircraft sat silently in its final resting place, a monument to the night everything had changed, and to the woman who'd refused to let it end in tragedy. 72 hours later, Maya Chen stood at the gates of Naval Station Norfolk, her discharge papers still warm in her pocket, and her future completely uncertain. The base was enormous, the largest naval installation in the world, home to aircraft carriers and destroyers, and more military firepower than most countries possessed. Maya had been on plenty of military bases during her career, but this one felt different, foreign, like stepping into a world where all the rules she knew no longer applied. A young ensign met her at the gate. Sergeant Chen, Commander Williams is expecting you. It's just Maya now, she said. I'm a civilian. The ensign smiled. Not for long, ma'am. Follow me. They drove through the base in a Navy vehicle passing hangars and barracks and the endless infrastructure of American military power. Maya watched it all through the window, trying to reconcile herself to this new reality. 3 days ago, she'd been an Army sergeant heading home from a routine assignment. Now she was something else entirely, something she didn't have a name for yet. The building they stopped at looked unremarkable from the outside. Standard government architecture, standard security protocols, standard everything. But when Maya stepped through the doors, she realized immediately that nothing about this place was standard. Commander Patricia Williams was waiting in the lobby. She was older than Maya had imagined, mid-50s, with silver-streaked hair, and the kind of weathered face that came from decades of high-stress operations. But her eyes were sharp, and her handshake was firm. Sergeant Chen, welcome to the Aviation Emergency Response Initiative. It's just Maya now, she repeated. Not here. Williams smiled slightly. Here, you're whatever rank we decide to give you, and based on what I've seen, that's going to be something considerably higher than sergeant. She led Maya through a series of secured doors, each requiring different credentials, until they reached a large open space filled with workstations, monitors, and equipment Maya didn't recognize. This is the nerve center, Williams explained. When an aircraft gets into trouble anywhere in the world, we get the call. Real-time data feeds satellite communications, direct links to cockpits and control towers, everything we need to diagnose problems and guide crews through emergencies. Impressive. It's a start. Williams stopped at a central console. But technology only gets us so far. What we really need are people who can interpret what the technology tells us. People who understand machines at an intuitive level. People like me. Exactly like you. Williams turned to face her. What you did on Flight 847 wasn't just impressive, it was unprecedented. You diagnosed failures that our best systems missed. You provided guidance that kept an aircraft flying when every indicator said it should have crashed. I got lucky. No, you got prepared. Williams' voice sharpened. Luck doesn't keep 180 people alive at 35,000 feet. Preparation does. Training does. The kind of deep knowledge that takes years to develop. Maya thought about her grandmother again, about the years of work that had built her reputation one repair at a time, about the bronze stars she'd earned not through heroism, but through consistent, relentless competence. What exactly do you want me to do here? 3 things. Williams held up a finger. First, you'll help us develop new diagnostic protocols based on what you know. The intuitive methods you use, we want to understand them, codify them, teach them to others. A second finger. Second, you'll be part of our rapid response team. When emergencies happen, you'll be in the chair talking crews through whatever they're facing. A third finger. Third, and this is the important one, you'll help us find other people like you. The ones who slipped through the cracks. The mechanics and technicians and crew chiefs who know more than their ranks suggest. Maya absorbed this. You want me to build a team. I want you to build an army of experts who can save lives when technology fails. That's a big ask. That's why I'm asking you. Williams stepped closer. Maya, what happened on that flight, it happens more often than people know. Aircraft get into trouble, systems fail, crews panic, and people die because no one knows how to help them. Her voice dropped. Last year we lost 4 commercial aircraft to mechanical failures that could have been diagnosed in time. 732 people dead because the pilots didn't have the expertise to interpret what their machines were telling them. Maya felt the weight of that number settle on her shoulders. 732 people. Families destroyed. Lives ended. And you think I can prevent that? I think you can try. I think you're the best chance we've got. Williams paused. But I won't lie to you, this job will break you if you let it. You'll save some people. You'll lose others. And you'll carry every failure with you for the rest of your life. Sounds like the Army. It's worse. In the Army, at least you're there. You can see what's happening, react in real time, make decisions based on what's in front of you. Williams shook her head. Here you're watching from a distance, listening to voices that might die while you're talking to them, knowing that a wrong word, a missed diagnosis, a moment of hesitation could cost lives. Maya thought about that. About the weight of responsibility it implied, about the toll it would take. When do I start? Williams smiled. Right now. The first month was hell. Maya had thought she knew what stress felt like. She'd been under fire in Syria. She'd diagnosed engine failures while mortar rounds exploded around her. She'd worked 40-hour stretches keeping helicopters flying in conditions that should have grounded them permanently. None of that prepared her for this. The training was relentless. Hours of simulations designed to push her to the breaking point. Mock emergencies that came faster and more complex than anything she'd faced in real life. Instructors who criticized every decision, every diagnosis, every word she spoke to imaginary crews. Too slow, they'd say. By the time you finished that sentence, the aircraft was already in the water. Wrong priority. You focused on the engine when the real problem was hydraulics. Everyone's dead. Your voice cracked. The crew heard fear. Now they're panicking instead of following your instructions. It was brutal. Humiliating. The kind of training designed to strip away everything you thought you knew and rebuild you from scratch. Maya hated every second of it. But she didn't quit. Because every time she wanted to walk away, she thought about the little girl with pigtails, About the 180 people who'd walked off Flight 847 alive. About the 732 who hadn't been so lucky the year before. She thought about her grandmother, who'd worked 18-hour days in a restaurant kitchen and never complained, who'd built a life through sheer determination when everything and everyone said she couldn't. What would she say if Maya gave up now? So she kept going, day after day, week after week, learning new systems, new protocols, new ways of thinking about problems she'd been solving intuitively for years. And slowly, painfully, she started getting better. "You're improving," Williams told her after the 4th week. "Your response times are down. Your diagnostic accuracy is up. You're starting to think like a systems analyst instead of just a mechanic. Doesn't feel like improvement. Feels like drowning. That's what improvement feels like at this level." Williams handed her a cup of coffee. "The question is whether you can keep improving, whether you can become not just good, but exceptional." "I thought I was already exceptional. That's why you recruited me." "You were exceptional in the field. Now you need to become exceptional in the chair." Williams paused. "It's a different skill set. Some people can't make the transition. They're too attached to hands-on work, too frustrated by the distance." "And you think I think you're stubborn enough to try." Williams smiled slightly. "But trying isn't enough. At some point you're going to face a real emergency. People are going to die or live based on what you say and how you say it. And when that moment comes, you need to be ready." Maya thought about that. About the weight of lives measured in words and seconds. How do you know when you're ready? You don't. You just hope you are. William's expression darkened. "I've been doing this for 15 years. I've talked crews through engine failures, fires, structural damage, everything you can imagine. And every time I wonder if I'm good enough, if I've trained hard enough, if I'll say the right thing at the right moment." "Do you always?" Williams was quiet for a long moment. "No. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you do everything right, and people still die. And you have to live with that." "How? By remembering the ones you saved?" Williams' voice softened. "By knowing that every person who walks off a damaged aircraft is someone who wouldn't have survived without you. That's what keeps you going. That's what makes the failures bearable." Maya absorbed this, the weight of it, the truth of it. "When do I get my first real case?" "Soon." William stood. "Very soon." The call came at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Maya was asleep in her quarters on base when her phone screamed her awake. She grabbed it, saw the emergency code, and was out of bed before she finished reading the message. 2 minutes later, she was in the operations center, heart pounding, adrenaline surging. "What do we have?" she demanded, sliding into her chair. The night shift supervisor looked up from his console. His face was pale. "Trans-Pacific Flight 892, Boeing 787 Dreamliner. Left Tokyo 4 hours ago en route to San Francisco. They're declaring emergency." "What kind of emergency?" "Multiple system failures. Similar pattern to Flight 847. Maya finished. Her blood ran cold. "I know the pattern." She pulled up the flight data on her screen. The aircraft was over the Pacific Ocean, roughly 3,000 miles from the nearest land. 243 passengers, 18 crew. The numbers hit her like a physical blow. More people than Flight 847. More distance from help. More things that could go wrong. "Connect me to the cockpit." "Already patching through." A burst of static, then a voicemail strained, fighting to stay calm. "This is Trans-Pacific 892. We're experiencing cascading system failures. Request immediate assistance." Maya leaned forward. "Trans-Pacific 892, this is Aviation Emergency Response Norfolk. I'm Maya Chen. I'm here to help you get your aircraft down safely." "Chen," the captain's voice changed. "The Maya Chen from Flight 847. "Yes, sir." "Same person, different aircraft. Talk to me about what you're seeing." The captain, his name was Harrison, she'd learn later, began describing the failures. Autopilot dead. Hydraulics fluctuating. Electrical systems throwing intermittent faults. The same pattern she'd seen 6 weeks ago playing out again at 35,000 feet. But this time, she wasn't in the cockpit. She was 3,000 miles away, watching data streams on a screen, unable to touch the aircraft, or feel its vibrations, or smell the burning electronics. "Your starboard engine is showing temperature anomalies," Maya said, studying the feed. "But the pattern doesn't match actual thermal stress. I think you've got a sensor malfunction." "Same thing that happened on 847. "Similar, not identical?" Maya's mind raced through possibilities. "Captain Harrison, I need you to cross-reference your backup sensor array, port-side secondary display. Tell me what readings you're getting." A pause. Rustling. Then, backup shows normal temperatures. But the primary, ignore the primary. Trust the backup. Maya's voice was firm. "Your sensor is lying to you. If you throttle back based on bad data, you'll starve the engine." "How can you be sure?" "Because I've seen this before, and because the engine vibration pattern you're experiencing doesn't match thermal stress. It matches electrical interference." Another pause. Longer this time. "Okay," Harrison finally said. "We're trusting the backup. What else?" Maya worked through the problems one by one. The hydraulic fluctuations, the electrical faults, the navigation systems that couldn't agree on where the aircraft actually was. Each problem fed into the next, creating a cascade that threatened to overwhelm the crew. But she'd trained for this. Hour after hour of simulations. Day after day of learning to think systematically, to prioritize ruthlessly, to communicate clearly under pressure. She'd been broken down and rebuilt, and now she understood why. "Captain, your cross-feed valve is stuck partially open. Same issue as 847. You need to reroute hydraulic pressure through the auxiliary circuit." "My first officer's working on it. What's next?" "Next is the hard part." Maya took a breath. "You're 3,000 miles from land in any direction. Even at maximum fuel efficiency, you're going to be tight on reserves." "I know. Midway Island. It's your closest option. 1,200 miles. Can you make it?" A long silence. "It'll be close. Then we need to make sure nothing else goes wrong." Maya leaned into the microphone. "I'm going to walk you through every system on that aircraft. We're going to stabilize everything that can be stabilized and prepare for everything that can't. And when you touch down on Midway, you're going to be ready for whatever happens." "You think we can make it?" Maya thought about the question. About the distance, the fuel, the damaged systems, the 261 people whose lives hung in the balance. "I think you've got a hell of a good crew and a hell of a tough aircraft," she said. "And I think you've got me. So yes, Captain, I think you can make it." Harrison's voice was stronger when he replied. "Then let's get to work." The next 4 hours were the longest of Maya's life. She stayed on the line with Harrison the entire time, monitoring every system, anticipating every problem, providing guidance at every turn. When the electrical system threw another fault, she walked them through the reset. When the hydraulic pressure dropped again, she helped them compensate. When the first officer started showing signs of panic, she talked him through it with the same steady voice she'd used in combat zones. Around her, the operations center filled with people. Williams arrived watching from a distance. Other analysts joined, feeding her data, anticipating her needs. The entire weight of the Aviation Emergency Response Initiative focused on one aircraft over the Pacific, But in the end, it came down to Maya and Captain Harrison. Two voices connected across 3,000 miles fighting together against physics and failure and time. "We've got Midway on visual," Harrison finally reported. His voice was exhausted, but alive. "Runway's in sight. How are your systems? Holding, barely, but holding." "Then bring her home, Captain. You've earned it." The landing wasn't pretty. The nose gear held, but only just. Emergency crews swarmed the aircraft the moment it stopped moving. But when the doors opened and passengers began streaming onto the tarmac, Maya finally let herself breathe. 243 passengers. 18 crew. All alive. All because of a voice 3,000 miles away telling them exactly what they needed to hear. Williams appeared at her side as the operations center erupted in quiet celebration. "You did it," the commander said. Maya shook her head. "We did it. The captain, the crew, the team here. You did it." Williams' voice was firm. "That crew was 3 hours from ditching in the Pacific. No one would have survived that. And the reason they didn't ditch is because you were on the other end of that radio keeping them calm, keeping them focused, keeping them alive." Maya looked at the screens, at the data feeds showing the aircraft safely on the ground, at the passenger manifest with 261 names that would go home to their families. "It doesn't feel real," she said quietly. "Being this far away, not touching the aircraft, just talking. That's the hardest part," Williams acknowledged. "Learning to trust your voice. Learning that words can be as powerful as hands. I don't know if I can keep doing this." "You can." Williams' expression softened. "Because you're not doing it for yourself. You're doing it for them. For the little girl on Flight 847 who wanted to be a soldier. For the mother who needed to get home to her sick daughter. For everyone who steps onto an aircraft and trusts that someone somewhere knows how to keep them safe." Maya thought about that. About the weight of trust. About the responsibility she'd accepted when she'd walked through these doors. What happens now? Now you rest. Tomorrow you debrief. And then you go back to training because there's always more to learn. Williams paused. "But tonight you celebrate. You saved 261 lives. That matters. Does it get easier? No." Williams' voice was honest. "It gets different. You learn to carry the weight. You learn to find joy in the successes and meaning in the failures. But it never gets easier." Maya nodded slowly. She understood now. Understood what Williams had tried to tell her weeks ago about the toll this job would take. But she also understood something else. Something deeper. She'd spent her entire career being overlooked and underestimated. Being judged by her appearance instead of her abilities, fighting for every inch of respect in a world that seemed designed to deny it. And now finally she was in a place where none of that mattered, where the only thing that counted was competence, where her voice could reach across oceans and her knowledge could save lives. That was worth any price. "Commander," Maya said. "Yes." "Thank you for seeing what I could become." Williams smiled. "I didn't see what you could become. I saw what you already were. All I did was give you a bigger stage." She walked away, leaving Maya alone with her thoughts and her screens and the quiet hum of an operations center that never really slept. 3,000 miles away, passengers were disembarking from a damaged aircraft, crying and laughing and clutching each other with the desperate relief of people who'd just cheated death. They didn't know her name. Most of them would never know she existed, but they were alive because of what she'd done. And for Maya Chen, that was more than enough. 6 months had passed since Maya Chen walked through the gates of Naval Station Norfolk. 6 months of training, of emergencies, of lives saved, and lessons learned. 6 months that had transformed her from a decorated sergeant into something else entirely, a legend that pilots whispered about in crew rooms around the world. The woman who could hear what aircraft were saying. Maya didn't think of herself that way. She was just doing her job the same way she'd always done it. But the numbers didn't lie. 17 emergency responses. 17 successful outcomes. 0 fatalities on her watch. It was a record that no one in the history of the program had matched. "You're making the rest of us look bad," Williams joked one morning, dropping a file on Maya's desk. "Command's asking why we even bother with other analysts." Maya opened the file. "What's this? Your next assignment. And before you ask, yes, it's different from the others." The file contained a single photograph. A woman in her 60s, silver-haired, elegant. Familiar somehow, though Maya couldn't place where she'd seen her before. Who is she? Senator Margaret Crawford, chair of the Senate Armed Services Committee. She's flying back from an overseas inspection tour tomorrow. Military transport, commercial. Her choice, she says, it keeps her connected to regular Americans. William's expression was unreadable. "The problem is we've received intelligence suggesting a possible threat to her aircraft." Maya sat up straighter. "What kind of threat?" "Unknown. Could be mechanical sabotage, could be nothing. But the CIA flagged the flight and command wants our best analyst monitoring in real time." "You want me to babysit a senator's flight?" "I want you to make sure nothing goes wrong." Williams paused. "Maya, this isn't just about one woman. Crawford controls military funding. She's got more power over defense spending than anyone in Congress. If something happens to her..." Political earthquake. Worse. Policy earthquake. Everything we've built here depends on continued funding. Crawford's been our biggest supporter. Williams leaned forward. "I'm not asking you to play politics. I'm asking you to do what you do, keep an aircraft safe. The fact that there's a senator on board is incidental." Maya looked at the photograph again. At the woman whose life might depend on her skills. "When does she fly?" "Tomorrow morning. JFK to Reagan National. 2-hour flight." That's a short hop. Short enough that most threats wouldn't have time to develop. Long enough that if something does go wrong, we'd have options. Maya closed the file. "I'll be ready." "I know you will." William stood to leave, then stopped. "One more thing. Captain Cole called yesterday. He's been following your work." "What did he say?" "That he wasn't surprised. That he knew from the moment he met you that you'd end up somewhere like this." William smiled. "He also said to remind you that the coin he gave you comes with obligations. Apparently you're supposed to pass it on to someone who deserves it." Maya touched her pocket where Cole's challenge coin had lived for the past 6 months. She'd carried it through every emergency, every success, every moment of doubt. "I haven't found anyone yet." "You will, when you're ready." Williams left. Maya sat alone with the file, the photograph, and the weight of tomorrow's responsibility. One flight, one senator. One chance to prove that everything she'd become was worth something. She was ready. The next morning, Maya was in her chair at 5:47 a.m., 3 hours before Senator Crawford's flight was scheduled to depart. She'd spent the night studying everything: the aircraft's maintenance history, the crew's flight records, the weather patterns, the route. If there was a threat to this flight, she was going to see it coming. "Flight 1247, right on schedule," her technical assistant reported. "Aircraft is a Boeing 737-800, 16 months since last major maintenance, clean inspection record. Crew: Captain Thomas Reed, 30 years experience. First Officer Amanda Walsh." Maya froze. Walsh? Different person. No relation to the other one. The assistant checked his notes. "Although funny coincidence, her brother was on your Flight 847. Maya's stomach tightened. Which one? Lieutenant James Porter, the Navy officer. The universe had a sick sense of humor. Of all the first officers on all the aircraft in all the world, this one had to be related to a man who'd tried to have her removed from first class. Does she know about me? I don't know. Should she? Maya considered the question. No, it doesn't matter. What matters is getting this aircraft down safely. But even as she said it, she couldn't shake the feeling that the universe was testing her. Again. The flight departed JFK at 8:15 a.m. Maya watched the data feeds as the aircraft climbed through the morning clouds, every system reporting normal. Senator Crawford was in first-class irony not lost on Maya, surrounded by aides and security personnel. 212 other passengers filled the remaining seats, most of them unaware that their flight was being monitored by one of the most advanced crisis response systems in the world. Everything was normal for the first 47 minutes. Then the starboard engine coughed. Maya's hand slammed down on her console. Give me engine data, now! The readings flooded her screen, temperature fluctuating, fuel flow irregular, the same pattern she'd seen twice before. No, she whispered. Not again. But it was happening again. The same cascade, the same failures, the same nightmare playing out on a different aircraft. Connect me to the cockpit, priority 1! The link established within seconds. Flight 1247, this is aviation emergency response. I'm Maya Chen. You're experiencing an engine anomaly. Captain Reed's voice came back confused. We're showing normal readings. Your sensors are compromised. I'm seeing data that your instruments aren't displaying. Starboard engine is developing failure patterns consistent with fuel system contamination. A pause. Then, how is that possible? I don't know yet, but I need you to reduce starboard throttle by 15% and prepare for possible engine shutdown. On whose authority? On the authority of the woman who's going to keep you alive if you listen to her. Maya's voice was steel. Captain, I've done this before. Flight 847, Trans-Pacific 892. You can verify that in about 30 seconds, or you can trust me now and verify later. Another pause. Reducing starboard throttle. Maya watched the data feeds. The engine's erratic behavior stabilized slightly, buying them time. First Officer Walsh, she said. I need you to run a manual diagnostic on your fuel system sensors. Specifically check for any anomalies in the data relay from the starboard wing tank. Amanda Walsh's voice was sharp professional. Running diagnostic now. Maya waited, her heart pounding. If this was sabotage, if someone had deliberately contaminated the fuel or compromised the sensors, then the threat assessment had been right, and Senator Crawford's flight was in danger. I'm showing a discrepancy, Walsh reported. Fuel quantity readings from the starboard tank don't match the flow calculations. We're either burning more fuel than we should be, or someone tampered with the sensors to mask a leak. Silence from the cockpit. Captain Reed, Maya said, you need to declare emergency and divert to the nearest suitable airport. You cannot complete this flight on potentially compromised fuel. We're 40 minutes from Reagan National, closer to continue than to turn back. If your starboard tank is leaking, you might not have 40 minutes of fuel. And if the contamination spreads to your port engine, you'll have nothing. You're asking me to divert a flight carrying a United States senator based on sensor discrepancies. I'm asking you to save 214 lives based on everything I know about aircraft failures. Maya's voice didn't waver. Captain, I was dragged out of first class 6 months ago because 2 Navy officers decided I didn't belong. An hour later, I was in the cockpit because I was the only person who could keep that aircraft flying. Trust me now. Divert. The silence stretched for an eternity. Then, Flight 1247 declaring emergency, diverting to Philadelphia International. Maya's relief lasted exactly 3 seconds, because that's when the port engine started showing the same symptoms. "Both engines," she said, disbelief flooding her voice. "They hit both engines." The aircraft was now 23,000 feet above eastern Pennsylvania, with 2 compromised engines and a fuel situation that was deteriorating by the minute. "Talk to me, Maya." Williams had appeared at her station, face grave. "What are we looking at? Coordinated sabotage. Someone contaminated both fuel tanks or compromised the fuel system in a way that's affecting both engines simultaneously. Can they make Philadelphia?" Maya ran the calculations. "Distance, fuel burn rate, engine degradation curve. Maybe, if nothing else goes wrong." "Nothing else ever goes wrong in these situations," Williams said dryly. "I'm alerting emergency services. What do you need?" "Everything. Fire trucks, ambulances, the works." Maya turned back to her screen. "And pray." The next 18 minutes were the longest of Maya's life. She stayed on the line with Captain Reed and First Officer Walsh, guiding them through every adjustment, every compensation, every decision that might mean the difference between survival and catastrophe. The starboard engine flamed out at 12,000 feet. "Engine 1 is gone," Reed reported, his voice tight but controlled. "Running on port engine only." "Port engine is showing increased stress," Walsh added. "Temperature climbing. We're pushing it beyond safe limits." Maya's mind raced through options. Single-engine landing was possible, commercial pilots trained for it, but with a potentially compromised remaining engine and uncertain fuel quantities. "Captain, what's your fuel status? Gauges show adequate." "But if the gauges are lying, assume they're lying. How far to Philadelphia? 8 minutes? Maybe 10. Can the port engine hold for 10 minutes? Silence. Then, I don't know. Maya closed her eyes. She was 300 miles away, watching data streams, unable to touch the aircraft or feel its struggles. All she had was her voice. "Captain Reed, listen to me." Maya's voice dropped to something almost intimate. "I've been where you are. Not in this exact situation, but close enough. I know what it feels like when the aircraft is dying around you, and you don't know if you're going to make it. So what do? You talk to the machine. You listen to what it's telling you. You give it everything you've got, and you trust that it wants to fly as much as you want it to. Talk to it. I know how that sounds, but aircraft aren't just metal and systems. They're something else, something that responds to the people who understand them." Maya paused. "That engine doesn't want to quit. Help it keep going." Another silence. Then Reed's voice came back, stronger than before. "All right, let's get this bird home." The port engine held. It shouldn't have. The temperature readings were critical. The stress indicators were screaming. Every diagnostic said it was about to fail, but it held. Maya watched the data feeds as the aircraft descended toward Philadelphia, emergency vehicles racing into position, fire trucks lining the runway. The engine temperature climbed higher with every passing second. "We've got the runway," Walsh reported. 2 miles out. "Keep it smooth," Maya said. "Don't ask for anything you don't need. Just let it glide." 1 mile. Half a mile. "Gear down," Reed called. The landing gear deployed. The engine screamed in protest but didn't quit. "Flare." The aircraft touched down. The port engine died the moment the wheels hit concrete, its job finally done. Fire trucks swarmed the aircraft as it rolled to a stop. Emergency slides deployed. Passengers began evacuating. Maya watched it all on her screens, hardly daring to breathe. 214 people. Senator Crawford. The crew. All of them walking off the aircraft on their own 2 feet. "They made it," Williams said quietly. "You did it again." Maya didn't respond. She was watching the data feeds, watching the last moments of an engine that had given everything it had to bring its passengers home safely. "Thank you," she whispered to the machine that couldn't hear her. "Thank you for holding on." The investigation that followed confirmed what Maya had suspected. Sabotage. A sophisticated attack on the fuel system designed to cause catastrophic engine failure mid-flight. The perpetrators were identified within days, a foreign intelligence operation targeting Senator Crawford. But they'd underestimated one thing: the woman on the other end of the radio. The media coverage was intense. Maya's name was everywhere: newspapers, television, social media. The woman who'd saved a senator's life. The mechanic turned crisis responder who'd prevented what could have been a national tragedy. She hated every second of it. "You can't hide forever," Williams told her after the third interview request she'd declined. "People want to know your story." "My story isn't about me. It's about the work, about the training, about what we're building here." "That's what I keep telling the Pentagon, but they want a face for the program. And right now that face is yours." Maya thought about Flight 847, about being dragged from first class, about the years of being overlooked and underestimated. "Fine," she finally said. "One interview, but I do it my way." The interview aired 3 weeks later. Maya sat across from the journalist in her dress uniform, the new one with the special designator that Williams had pushed through command. "Sergeant Chen." "It's Lieutenant Commander now, actually." The journalist's eyebrows rose. "That's quite a promotion." "It's quite a program." Maya kept her voice steady. "We've built something at the Aviation Emergency Response Initiative that didn't exist before, a way to save lives when everything else fails, a way to connect expertise with emergencies in real time anywhere in the world. And it all started with Flight 847. It started before that." Maya thought about her grandmother, about the years of work, about every time she'd been dismissed because of how she looked. It started with a little girl who was told she couldn't do certain things because of who she was, and decided to prove everyone wrong. "The Navy officers who had you removed from first class, have you spoken to them since?" Maya paused. "One of them reached out a few months ago. James Porter. He wanted to apologize in person." "Did you accept?" "I told him that apologies don't change the past, but they can change the future." Maya met the journalist's eyes. "He's enrolled in a program now, working to address bias in military culture. I don't know if he'll make a difference, but at least he's trying." "And the other one, Walsh. He's no longer in the military. I don't know what happened to him, and I don't particularly care." Maya's voice hardened slightly. "Some people learn from their mistakes. Some people are their mistakes. You can't save everyone." "Speaking of saving people, your record is remarkable. Dozens of lives saved. 0 fatalities under your watch. How do you explain that?" Maya thought about the question, about the weight of responsibility she'd carried for the past months, about the lives that had depended on her voice and her knowledge and her ability to stay calm when everything was falling apart. "I don't explain it," she finally said. "I just do the work. Every day, every emergency, every aircraft that needs help. That's all any of us can do. Show up, do the work, and hope it's enough." "Is it enough?" Maya smiled for the first time in the interview. "Ask me again in 20 years. The interview ended. Maya stood, shook hands with the journalist, and walked out of the studio into the afternoon sunlight. Her phone buzzed. A text from Captain Cole. "Watched the interview. Your grandmother would be proud." Maya's eyes burned. She typed back, "I hope so." Another text, this one from Williams. "Pentagon's approved the expansion. We're doubling the team. Your recommendations for new analysts have been accepted." Maya read the message twice. Then she pulled out the challenge coin Cole had given her, the one she'd carried for 6 months, waiting for the right moment. "Those who dare," she read aloud. She knew exactly who she was going to give it to. 3 days later, Maya stood at the Norfolk gates watching a young woman approach. 22 years old. Just discharged from the Army. 5 years of aviation maintenance, including 2 combat deployments. Her name was Sarah Mitchell. She'd been passed over for promotion twice, dismissed by superiors who couldn't see past her age and gender, transferred to dead-end assignments by officers who didn't think she had what it took. "Sound familiar? Specialist Mitchell?" Maya called out. The young woman snapped to attention. "Ma'am?" "At ease. I'm not your commanding officer." Maya walked toward her. "I'm your recruiter. Welcome to the Aviation Emergency Response Initiative." Mitchell's eyes widened. "I still don't understand why you selected me. My record isn't anything special." "Your record shows someone who kept aircraft flying in impossible conditions, who diagnosed failures that more experienced technicians missed, who never gave up no matter how many times she was overlooked." Maya smiled. "Your record shows me." "Ma'am, I was U specialist. 7 months ago. Underestimated, dismissed, invisible." Maya pulled out Cole's challenge coin. "Someone saw what I could become and gave me a chance. Now I'm giving you the same chance." She pressed the coin into Mitchell's palm. "What is this? A promise. That from now on, your skills matter more than anything else. That you'll be judged on what you can do, not what you look like. That you'll have every opportunity to become the best version of yourself." Mitchell stared at the coin, at the words inscribed around the edge. "Those who dare." "That's who we are now," Maya said. "The ones who dare to save lives when everyone else has given up. The ones who listen when machines are dying. The ones who refuse to let anyone tell us we don't belong." She stepped back. "Ready to change the world. Specialist." Mitchell looked up. In her eyes, Maya saw the same fire that had burned in her own heart for as long as she could remember. The same determination, the same refusal to be diminished. "Yes, ma'am. I'm ready." Maya nodded. "Then let's get to work." They walked through the gates together toward the building where impossible things happened every day, where lives were saved by voices across oceans, where competence mattered more than appearance and dedication mattered more than rank. Somewhere in the world, an aircraft was taking off. Its passengers were settling into their seats, trusting that someone somewhere knew how to keep them safe. They were right to trust. Because Maya Chen was on duty. And she wasn't alone anymore. The woman who'd been dragged from first class had built an army of experts who would never let anyone be dismissed the way she'd been. Who would fight for every life, every aircraft, every person who deserved to get home safely. That was her legacy now. Not the medals or the promotions or the interviews, just the simple, powerful truth that she'd proven over and over again the quietest person in the room might be exactly the one everyone needs most. And Maya Chen would spend the rest of her life making sure the world never forgot it. What would you have done if you'd seen someone treated the way Maya was on that flight? Would you have spoken up or stayed silent like everyone else? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and your perspective matters here. If this story reminded you that real expertise doesn't always look the way you expect, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss what happens next. Share this with someone who knows that the person they dismiss today might be the one who saves their life tomorrow. More stories about hidden heroes are waiting on your screen right now. Click one and keep going, because I'll be back tomorrow with another reminder that courage doesn't announce itself. It just shows up when you need it most. Until then, remember, sometimes the person they try to put in the back is the only one who can bring everyone home.